Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our series of shirim on the light of David HaMelech. And we're digging deeper, we're trying to be choifer and be'eros, we're trying to dig wells of self so that we can create vessels to hold this light. And like we've spoken about, there's two types of lights that a Jewish person has to live with, just as there's two types of lights that Klal Yisrael has to live with. And that's the light of Yosef and the light of David. The light of Yosef, the light of Mashiach ben Yosef, and the light of David, the light of Mashiach ben David. Yosef represents the straightforward path of knowing exactly how things are going, knowing where I'm headed to, knowing what I want my destination to be, and ultimately knowing the steps that it will take for me to reach that destination. Yosef searches for success. Yosef searches for wins. Yosef searches for the ability to clearly chart the progress towards wholeness in my life. But in contradistinction to Yosef, there's the light of David. And David is the opposite. David is not the light of significance or a hyper-specific destination. The light of David is the light of wandering. It's being where I am and finding everything that I need where I am, not because it's a destination that I wanted to get to, but because this is where I find myself right now. If the light of Yosef is the light of being a tzaddik, the light of David is the light of being a Baal Tshuva. And what we know is that the two of them are unified. Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, in the secret of the Yud and the Dalid, which is the gematria of David, which is 14, which is the secret of Biyad Hanaviyim Adameh, in the hands and the creativity of our work in this world is to unify the light of Yosef and David, the light of success and the lack of success, the light of winning and the light of losing, and ultimately from those two spaces to create the balance of what it means to be a Jew in this world. We have to come into a place of understanding the light of David. We know the light of Yosef. We've been taught the light of Yosef. We've learned the shirim of Rav Moshe Weinberger Shlita and all of the tzaddikim about Yosef HaTzaddik and what it means to be a person with shmira and hyper significance and hypersensitivity and making sure that we're doing what needs to be done. But the light of David Malka Mashiach is the light of the Baal Tshuva that comes about when we miss the point. In those moments where we fall, in those moments where we struggle, it's the light of Sukkos David Hanofeles, that perpetually falling process of David Malka Mashiach that is there to help us learn how to draw that process into the flow of spiritual experience as well. And this is what we're learning from David HaMelech. We're learning how to do tshuva. We're learning how to return back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu after our initial idealism has been broken. Because the idealism of Yosef HaTzadik, to a certain degree, is immature when it comes to the grandiosity of what it means to be a person in this world. To demand the ideal and to only live with the possibility of the ideal is to leave myself exposed to the very real possibility of not meeting the ideal. And if I'm not meeting the ideal like Yosef Atzadik, then I'm nothing. But it's David Malka Mashiach that teaches us that no, there's no ideal other than that which is real. Leis lemagar meklum. The light of Malchus has nothing of its own. It is what it is. It is a container, and the container itself holds the light that it is containing. It's not a particularized content of Yosef HaTzadik, but rather it is a context of David Malka Mashiach. And when we're able to enter into this light of David, we're able to frame our lives in a new way. Gemara tells us, Daf Gimel Maseches Brachos, when discussing the nature of nighttime, when discussing the nature of concealment and darkness in this world, and the gradations of dark. Darkness is always reflective of exile, and the Shlosha Mishmaros Halayla, the Dalid Mishmaros Halayla, the three guarding points of time of the nighttime, the four guarded points of time. Chazal are spending a lot of time trying to understand the nature of the nighttime. Something that we've spoken about in the past is that really the entire edifice of Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is the territory of David HaMelech, is rooted around trying to domesticate the chaos of the nighttime. The nighttime represents exile. Talmud Bavli represents darkness, the descent away from prophecy into the wisdom of what it means to try and find God after prophecy is to enter into the treacherous territory of the nocturnal dreamscape of the mind, where things appear differently than what they actually are, where information is being conveyed to us in a way that doesn't actually represent the truth value of what it means. It's the bilbul of the Talmud Bavli, the darkness that a person needs to be restored. They need to restore their souls. And that's why the entirety of Torah Sheba'al Peh begins with Brachos L'Rosh Tzadik, the secret of unifying the inside and the outside, the Toich and the Bar. And Me'emasai Korin et Shema Ba'arvis, Me'emasai, from my fear, from my concern of facing a nighttime of concealment, is where I feel compelled to uncover the light of unity, to scream out Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, specifically from within the nighttime. And it's only from the nighttime that we can uncover the secret of Laila Kiyom Ya'ir. And the nighttime, the territory of the nighttime is the territory of Dovid HaMelech. If the daytime is associated with Yosef HaTzadik, then the nighttime is associated with Dovid Malka Mashiach, the times of concealment, the times where fears emerge, the times where natural anxiety begins to ascend within the self, where it begins to question because it no longer has the sunlight of the clarity of the day. Unlike Moshe Rabbeinu, who's associated with Yosef HaTzadik, the nighttime of Dovid Malka Mashiach is associated with the moon and Yehoshua ben Nun. It's receptivity, it's pure receptivity, it's exposure to the outside of things. It's the vulnerability of what it means to hear bumps in the night and to realize that, okay, I could either choose to be afraid or to find confidence. And this is why Torah Sheba'al Peh starts with so much of a discussion about the nighttime and how to say Shema at night and the length of night and the times of night. And in the midst of discussing the nature of night, we uncover a secret point at the heart of nighttime, which represents a transition away from the darkness of night and the beginning of the dawn of a new day, which is Chatzos Laila. Chatzos Laila, the midpoint of the night, midnight. The nature of a midpoint, the nature of midnight, is to come to teach us a very important thing, that when a person is at the beginning of something, they can feel excited about where it's going to go. When a person is at the end of something, they can take an accounting of what has taken shape. The midpoint of something, the emsa of something, is the point where I am farthest from the beginning and farthest from the end, which is why I can feel forlornment on both elements of the self. I can't find sturdiness in the past, nor can I find sturdiness in the future, but rather I'm left exposed to the extremes of the midpoint. And it's specifically at that point of Chatzos Laila, where the night is darkest, where the kochos of Mitzrayim are darkest, where the concealment and the thickening nature of darkness seems to reach its crescendo. But it's specifically there that our tzaddikim teach us, in the spirit of Dovid Malka Mashiach, that a person has to awaken themselves. A person has to get up b'chatzos laila, to awaken themselves at the midpoint and enter into the tefillah of tikkun chatzos, to rectify the chatzos laila. We know that tikkun chatzos is a time of dealing with deficiency, of the mournful awareness of the fact that things are not the way that they need to be, that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. Now we can look at Churban Abayis, we can look at the mournful nature of Tikkun Chatzos as being about something specific, which is very true. But we can also look at it as being the point in which we grapple with and cultivate an awareness of all of the broken things. That Chatzos Laila is where the self wakes up and it becomes aware of the fact that I'm not by the day, I'm not by the night, I'm in the middle. I'm stuck in the middle. It's dark. And it's in this place that the tikkunim have to take shape. Instead of thinking about Tikkun Chatzos, which is davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the heart of nighttime, we can look at Tikkun Chatzos as another point of experience, which is that Chatzos represents a chatzi, it represents a half, it represents a lack of a full picture. This is what Malchus is. Malchus of Dovid doesn't have a full picture revealed in front of itself yet. It always just has a partial element of the picture. It's always only picking up on part of the image, half of the story. Dovid HaMelech grapples with a world where he is fundamentally aware that all I am receiving is a half. All I see is a half. And if all I'm seeing is a half, it means that everything I'm seeing is missing another half. This is the perspective that Dovid HaMelech brings into reality. That when we look at reality, all we're seeing is a half. There's another half of the story that's not told. And when a person sees a half, a chatzi davar, that implies that maybe there was a hole that was here beforehand that broke, and now I have to deal with the broken pieces in order to return back to some original whole. And so from that perspective, the ideal is a whole, the broken half is non-ideal, and the only usage of broken halves is for me to climb back up to meet wholeness again. And so that dealing with the half nature and the half measure of this world feels like a secondary stage, which is unfortunate but necessary. But there's another way of looking at the nature of the chatzi, that instead of looking at the world as a chatzi that is a broken whole, We can look at the world as a chatzi, as a half, but not because it's broken and not because it hasn't retained its original wholeness, but because the wholeness that we're desiring in this world is inaccessible to us. And that what we're truly searching for is the light of the infinite. And because the light of the infinite cannot be fully grasped in its whole nature, then the nature of spiritual growth will always be growing from what I thought was a whole and then coming to realize that it's still only a half, and that what I thought was perfect is still, in fact, imperfect in relationship to the next level. When a person lives their lives with the consciousness of a chatzi, of a halved nature, so instead of being broken and sad and shameful and guilty about not holding the whole within ourselves, we can transform the chatzi, the half nature of reality, and we can say, no, I'm not a broken half because I broke some original whole. I'm a broken half because the original whole that I'm trying to get back to is not yet available to me. And this is the secret of Tikkun Chatzos. Tikkun Chatzos is a tikkun of the chatzi. It's looking at the nature of half measures in our lives. It's looking at the desire to build and then that thing breaking, the good things that we want to do and those things falling apart, the goodness that we believe in, and then the sudden moment of doubting in those good things. Those are all the chatzis in our lives. Those are all the chatzim, all the arrows that seem to pierce something whole and to create a fissure and to create a cut in it. David Malka Mashiach wakes up and he says, I am going to be Meshabeach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am going to serve Hashem with joy and gratitude and song, specifically from within this midpoint, from within the chatzi, from within the brokenness, from within the recognition that I'm not whole. And so Chazal ask a question. They say David HaMelech knew when midpoint of the nighttime was. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't even know it. Moshe Rabbeinu could only say kichatzos. And David HaMelech knew how to say chatzos. He knew exactly when the midpoint was. And the Gemara on Daf Gimel in Maseches Brachos says as follows. It says that David HaMelech had a siman. David HaMelech had a siman, simana hayalo, that there was a point, he had a mnemonic device that would help him awaken to the midpoint of the night. And what was that? That there was a kinor that was talui al rosh mita shel David, that there was the harp of David that was hung up on top of the bed of David HaMelech. And every night at midnight, there would be a ruach tzefonis, there would be a northern wind that would come and it would breathe air through that harp, and the harp would play the harp, and it would awaken David HaMelech. And the Yerushalmi says that it wasn't necessarily hung on top of his bed, but rather it was hung next to the windows. And this ruach tzfonis would come and it would awaken those strings, and that sound of the strings would awaken David Malka Mashiach, and he would get up to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now we have to understand, if David HaMelech is the guardian of the half points, if David HaMelech is teaching us how to see ourselves as a half, but not necessarily by way of deficiency, but because we're human beings, and to come and find HaKadosh Baruch Hu from within that, so we have to understand what this kinor of David was. Because this kinor of David is a very fundamental thing. The kinor of David, the harp of David, not only does it rest right now at the heart of Yerushalayim for all to see, but it's something fundamental to the nature of David. And we also know that this kinor, this harp, represents the transitionary process of history as well. That Chazal tell us that nowadays the harp has 7 strings, but in the future the harp is going to have 8 strings, and then we're going to ascend to a time where the harp has 9 strings, until we can reach that point in time where the harp is played on the 10 strings, which is the full picture of all things. And so this harp of David plays a very fundamental role in the fact that it awakens him to the power to rectify the broken halves, to deal with brokenness in our lives, and not to be forlorn as a result of the broken nature of the halved measures of our lives, but rather to see in the half measures of our lives the very point in which we can serve Hashem. Because it's this kinor that David HaMelech wanted to serve Hashem with. It's this kinor that David HaMelech knew how to play for Shaul HaMelech. They say there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But again, as the Leonard Cohen says, but we don't really care about music. It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor chord, the major lift, the baffled king composed it Hallelujah. Meaning there is a chord that David HaMelech had a deep awareness of. And when this chord was played for others, it awoken within them the same feeling that David HaMelech was able to live with, and that's where the comfort came from. So what is it that is being played on the strings of David's harp? What is David's harp? And what is this ruach tzfonis, this northern wind that is coming to breathe through it? So Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer tells us something incredible. It says that the world was created like a base. Why was the world created like a base? Because the base is closed off on 3 sides, but it's opened on the northern side. so that we know that anybody who says that they can come along and close that northern side of the bays and make it into a square will know that they're dealing with avodah zarah and will know that they're coming to try and express a certain form of perfectibility and perfection. The openness of the bays, the openness of the northern side is to reveal to us that no matter how much a human being wants to be perfect, no matter how much a person wants to deify themselves and reveal themselves to be whole, as if they can be the redeemer, as if they can bring about full and complete completion, so that open side of the northern part of reality is always there to remind us that we can't be perfect. It's the foil in the human desire, the all too natural human desire to be perfect. That ruach sephoinus, that northern territory, made safoin tiftach hara'a, that place of concealment where constriction comes from and gvuros come from. It's that place where the human being is forced to come in contact with inherent deficiency. Now, it depends on how we look at inherent deficiency. David HaMelech reveals inherent deficiency, the Nakuda of Chisaron. But if we're looking at it as, oh, I was once whole and now I'm broken, and therefore my brokenness is only there to remind me of the fact that I can't be whole, then that brokenness is going to always perpetually be causing more and more symptoms and the desire to create false idols of perfection. But if we can cultivate a healthy perspective of this openness and this brokenness and this lack of completion that David HaMelech represents in the secret of Leis Le Magar Meklum, so we can really understand how this brokenness actually cultivates a depth of spiritual awareness. Because instead of thinking ourselves as a half because we've lost our whole, we can see ourselves as a half because we can never capture the whole. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is whole. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the wholeness of all wholeness. And therefore, every point of grasp, every moment of awareness in our lives is going to be coming into terms with that deficiency so that we can grow more and more. I thought that I had reached completion, but suddenly the ceiling of my grasp has been revealed to just be the ground of the next level of grasp. And David HaMelech lived with this perpetual awareness that Hashem, I'm going to dance for you with all of my strength because there's no amount of dancing that would ever give you what you deserve. There's no amount of dancing and expression that will ever be the fullness of the self, because the fundamental recognition of David Malka Mashiach and all of the tzaddikim is that no human being is perfect, and nothing can be perfect, and nothing is perfect other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nothing can ever be perfect other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Kedushasi Lamala Mikdushaseichem. And in the end of the day, the perfectibility of the human being and our ability to become more and more perfect will always be one step below the perfection, the pure perfection of the infinite, blessed be He. And as a result of that, the nature of chatzi, the nature of a chatzi davar, the nature of a chatzi shir, of the half measures of our lives, of the broken processes in our lives, these are not indicative of a failure and a fall from grace, which is more of an idolatrous impulse to claim perfection for ourselves and make ourselves into God because we can't tolerate being imperfect, but rather it holds the mark for ourselves. It's the deepest secret of being of being a Jew. It's that we are the guardians of imperfection. It's what the Heilige Magid says, that b'chatzotzros u'b'chol shofar, that we cry out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with trumpets. And chatzotzros can be read as chatzi tzuros, half shapes, half measures, that we are a half measure. We are a machzis hashekel to the upper half that is going to be fulfilled only from above. And that the fullest level of wholeness that we can reach is the wholeness of our imperfection. This is what David Malka Mashiach revealed. And this is what the Ruach Tzefoinus means. The Ruach Tzefoinus is that side of the world that remains open, perpetually reminding us that there are things concealed from our vision. Ma'arav tuvcha asher tzafanta l'reyecha. All of the goodness is hidden away. All of the goodness comes to the realization that Amarti echat me'evehi rechoyka mimeni. I thought I knew, and I come to terms with realizing that I can't know. And that, yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did create a mechitza in this world. And only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who has the ability of undoing the mechitza. Machatzti va'ani arapeh. I have created a mechitza, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I've created a distinction between the upper waters and the lower waters, to the degree that it appears that the lower waters are only half of the story, and that really the upper waters are going to be the fullness of the story. But what David HaMelech is coming to teach us is that no, Hashem is the one who made that mechitza, and Hashem is going to be the one to cure the world of that mechitza. But until Hashem decides to cure the world of that mechitza, it's our job to mind the distance, to gauge the fact that we cannot fulfill the tzad hatzafon. And it's that ruach tzvainis that comes and plays on the harp of David Malka Mashiach. The heart of David HaMelech is his harp. It is the heartstrings of David Malka Mashiach that are being played. What is being awoken within David HaMelech are the stirrings within the soul and the chords of the soul, where Chachma and Bina are engaged with one another in helping us grapple with learning what it means to be imperfect in this world. But it's no longer an imperfection that is symptomatic of a failure. We have that in our lives as well, and that's where tshuva takes place. But this is an acceptance of the chisaron. This is the secret chord. This is the secret chord that pleases the Lord, so to speak. This is the chord of imperfection. The fact that all I can do is play my song from within a place of imperfection, from within a place of being a chatzi davar, of realizing that I'm only a half measure. And that's what helps David HaMelech wake up at Chatzos, to be mamtik the dinim of Chatzos, to see the binyan of the Beis HaMikdash and the churban of the Beis HaMikdash, not as a fundamental tragedy which is only going to lead to more and more tragedy, but rather, as Rabbi Nachman says, the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash is just the preparatory stage for a furthering of a revelation, for a furthering more and more and more light, which will always reveal that we are in fact just halves. This is the tefillah of David Malka Mashiach. This is the perpetual tefillah of David HaMelech. David HaMelech says, Ani tefillah. It's not that the chords are waking David HaMelech up to praise Hashem. The chords are David HaMelech himself, and that is the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that comes from the heart of David HaMelech. The harp strings of David HaMelech's harp are the heartstrings of David HaMelech's heart, the lave of David that is awoken to the deficiency at the heart of creation. And it's only David HaMelech who has the ability to wake up at night and see the brokenness and see the chatzi davar of it all and enter into a place of tikkun chatzos, of fixing the broken halves. Meaning to say, not to fix it and make it whole again, but to accept the broken half and accept the fact that this is where I'm going to come to find you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the tefillah la'ani ki ya'atov, the tefillah of David Malka Mashiach. There's the tefillah of David HaMelech. There's the tefillah of Moshe, and then there's the tefillah of the ani. And David HaMelech identified most with the tefillah of the ani, the tefillah of the impoverished individual. An impoverished individual is someone who has something and is searching for more. And in the end of the day, there's two ways of looking at that impoverishment of lacking the whole. If I feel that I deserve the whole and I'm lacking the whole, then my desire for tzedakah and my desire for sustenance is trying to ignore the half nature of what it means to be a human being. But if I can accept the fact that no, I am an ani, dal va'ani ani, I am an ani because that's who I am as a human being, and it's from there that I'm going to scream out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from within the brokenness, from within the mechitza, from within the chatzi davar, from within the fact that I'm just a chatzi mensch, then that desire, that tefillah that comes up from the place of the mechitza, from the place of that chatzi davar, so it undoes the mechitzos, because in that place we're owning what it means to be deficient. We're owning the koyach hachisaron, which is the koyach of malchus. Revelation of malchus is the potency of a positive expression of a chisaron. And our work of malchus and Kabbalah's own malchus shemayim means learning how to be okay with the fact that we are a chatzi davar, always yearning for fulfillment. And then when we reach what we perceived as fulfillment, to then enter back into the moichin of tefillah la'ani, to realize that I'm still just a chatzi davar. This tefillah la'ani is not a tefillah that David HaMelech would daven. This was the very essence of David HaMelech. David HaMelech's entire essence was the tefillah la'ani. It was this walking around with the sense that I own the fact that I am a chatzi davar, that I am not a whole. And this is where the tikkun chatzos comes in. The tikkun of chatzi davar, the tikkun of the chatzayim, to fix the halves and to accept the halves as whole. And to accept the halves as bespeaking exactly what we feel that they bespeak, which is the fact that there's more work to be done. But it's not being driven to do more work because I'm not enough. I am enough, but there's so much more to reveal. I am enough, but there's so much more to reveal. And this is what the Rav Tzadok says. Rav Tzadok says this based on the Meshiloach, that the Tefillah La'ani and the awakening that David HaMelech had as a result of this kinor that rested on top of his head or by the windows, but was really taking shape within his heart. It's the awakening of realizing that, the deficiency is specifically where I'm meant to serve you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's like Rav Kook Schusay Ganalini would say that there's a tefillah hamisameda shel neshama, that the soul is in a perpetual state of prayer. Every aspect of the soul is in a perpetual state of screaming out. And listen to the words of Rav Tzadok HaKohen Melablin in Divrei Seifrim. And this is one makor amongst many that really can be used to convey the matter what we're trying to describe. He says as follows. The ani, the impoverished individual, every ounce of their communication in this world is tefillah. It's not that they talk and then they also daven. They're talking and their way of communicating with the world, their posture with the world is tefillah. It's a perpetual openness and a yearning upwards. Shezehu kol sichaso shvichas shibron libo ve'enav v'dachas rucho. That this is the very essence of what it means to be an impoverished individual. That every ounce of communication is an expression and an outpouring of the brokenness of the heart, the chatzilev, and the humility and the lowliness of spirit, ad shekol hashomea yirachem alav, to the point that anybody who hears what this ani is saying, or anybody who sees what this ani is doing, it's going to evoke and elicit compassion. Compassion from Hashem, compassion from the world. Vein sarach tefillah, rak sichasuhu tefillah. The ani doesn't even have to daven. The very essence is davening. And this is what it says by Dovid HaMelech, Va'ani tefillah, and I am tefillah, meaning it's not I don't daven, I am the tefillah. My very essence is this recognition of the Ruach Tzefoinus that comes to breathe through the kinor, and that Ruach Tzefoinus is that mitzafon tiftach hara, that there is concealment in the world. And it's in that place that we learn to be metakin lachatzi, to do tikkun chatzos, which is to say, Hashem, the morning and the galus is all part of a picture that I have not yet fully revealed yet. It's not that I need to return back to the full picture as it once was. It never was. The full picture has not yet taken shape. Bereshis is still only chatzi maimer. The end result is going to be when Mashiach Tzidkenu comes to be mashlim, the sof davar. He's going to be mashlim the sof, and he's going to reveal to us how we can then grow even further. But until then, it is our job to guard that northern side of experience, which is guarding the deficiency, but not by way of brokenness, but by way of the recognition of the perpetual condition of the soul. That va'ani tefillah means that my very essence is an expression of this tefillah. Shesham atzmo ani she'ein tzarich lispalel rak hu atzmo tefillah, kamo sheshamati apirish kain. This is what I heard from the Ishbitzer. That tefillah la'ani is not that the ani is davening, but rather that the very essence of the ani is davening. And an ani is someone who feels that they only have half of something. That chatzi davar, that chatzi measure. And the light of Tikkun Chatzos and the light of being awoken from within the stirring of the heart's yearning for that which is beyond us, but the ultimate recognition that we can't reach to that place that is beyond us, that is what draws down the rectification of the broken piece. That is where Dovid HaMelech reveals the true potency of what it means to be like Dovid, which is to realize that our deficiencies are ultimately not symptoms that need to be fixed, but they are stages and processes in which we need to cultivate our connectivity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Nachman explains this so beautifully in Torah Chaf Beis, but for our purposes, we'll just read a small piece of it. He says as follows, that this world is ultimately an Av and a Ben, father and a son, a mimer, a full statement, and a chatzi mimer, a half statement. Ki hana'asehu b'chinas nigla. And Rabbi Nachman goes on and he says as follows, every single level in reality, in relationship to the level that is higher than it, is considered as half a level. Because, for example, a father, who's the full level, let's say, when he speaks a full measure. But when the son, who in relationship to the father is only a half measure, when he speaks afterwards, all he says is a half measure. And so too with each and every level in relationship to the level that which is above it. It's going to be considered as half a level. And the level that's above it is going to be considered as a whole level in relationship to it. And from level to level to level. So right now, as I sit in this room, I'm not touching the ceiling, so therefore I'm a half measure. But if I were theoretically to be able to reach the ceiling of today, that would be a whole measure. But then the next day would reveal itself to be just a half measure in relationship to the next level, ad infinitum. But everything is going to remain in the semblance of a half measure. A half measure. The full measure is Chachma, the half measure is Bina. The full measure is Eden Ilah, the half measure is Eden Tata. Every single level is just a half level in relationship to that which is above it. And Rabbi Nachman goes further. And he says it's true also with human beings and animals and birds and plants. Every level of existence, Doimim, Sameach, Chai Medaber, everything in this world is only a half utterance, a half measure in relation to that which is above it. Because everything that we experience in this world is just a remez to the things that are above it, and from world to world. So that it turns out, says Rabbeinu, that the entirety of existence, in all of its wholeness, is still only just a half measure in relationship to that which is going to be truly full, which is the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's from this place that desire yearns from. It's from this awareness that I am a half measure, but not because I'm not whole, but because the whole is unreachable. David HaMelech transforms that chatzi. He transforms that chatzi into a place of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yitzchak Avinu is the one who did this also. Yitzchak is chatzi kuf. Yitzchak is the half of kuf. It's the nun shari bina. Bina is the ability to be maven davar mitoch davar. David HaMelech's kinor was in his heart, and it's the eight-stringed harp, which is the secret chord of bina, which is the secret of tshuva, which is teaching me that I can be better, not because I'm bad, but because I could always be better and better. I could do tshuva on my tshuva. Even when I'm whole, I'm a half in relationship to that which is above me. And that's the bina salev. That's the maven davar mitoch davar. How I can understand that there's a whole from within my half. That's tikkun chatzos. To be metaken the chatzi in our life, to learn what it means to be a chatzi, to learn that it's okay to mourn for the Beis Hamikdash, but the mourning for the Beis Hamikdash is the way in which we draw down our connection to the Beis Hamikdash. We are not mourning something that is lost and we're trying to retrieve something from the past. We're mourning that which is lost so that we can draw the energy of all of that mournful desire so that we can draw something even newer down. Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, where we're no longer going to be so bothered by the chatzi nature of it, because the other half of things is going to be revealed to our eyes. This is the secret of what Rav Avram Abulafia describes as the yichud of the shalim and the chatzi. This is something that Rav Yitzchak Morgenstern Shlita brings down from the writings of Rav Abulafia very clearly. That anytime a person is unifying something in this world, contemplating HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, so there are full names and there are half names. And we would think that you go from the half name to the full name. And when you leave the half name and you go to the full name, there's no need to return back to the half name. But what Rav Abram Abulafia reveals is that no, one must include the half within the whole, because even when a person grasps the whole, we must remember the half and the partial nature of things, because it's only metzas shivcho shel adam b'fanav, and that what we thought was the whole is going to be revealed to only be half in relationship to that which is beyond it. And this is David HaMelech, always yearning for that other half to be revealed, and realizing that the only way for that other half to be revealed is the yearning desire that the heart feels to be maven davar mitoch davar, to be oile in a secret of tshuva, but not a tshuva that's broken, but a tshuva that's growing. This is the secret of the tikkun chatzos, of David HaMelech being awoken by his heart, which wakes him up and whispers chisaron into his ear, that Hashem has created a mechitza in this world. And David HaMelech understands that only Hashem can fix that mechitza. Machatzti va'ani arapeh. Hashem made the mechitza and he's going to be the one to fix the mechitza. Until then, it is our job to mind the mechitza. Like we said that the Geder is Gematria Raz, is Gematria Or, that the boundaries that we create for ourselves and the acknowledgement of our fundamental nature of imperfection as a Chatzi Davar to the perfection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which will always create this sense of being a Chatzi Davar. But it's not a Chatzi Davar that's broken, it's a Chatzi Davar that's awake. It's a Chatzi Davar that guards the wholeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu by acknowledging that we can never be whole. And that's that Ruach Tzfainis, that Ruach Tzafon Bekirbi, that awakening from that northern part of the self, that sense of mystery and the not knowing and the hidden places within ourselves, that reveals to us the need to perpetually sing. And this is the secret chord that pleases the Lord, so to say. This is the chord of acknowledging that Hashem, yes, we are a Chatzi Davar. We are a Chatzi Davar, but we're no longer going to be broken by that. We're going to take those Chatzi Davarim and we're going to bring them up to you. And we're going to shoot them up to you like a chetz. We're going to shoot them up to you like an arrow in the light of Yitzchak HaTzadik, Yitzchak Avinu, who's the one who's going to be able to teach us about redemption, because Yitzchak Avinu is the only one who understands the secret of what it means to be a half measure. Gvura is about breaking things down, understanding the composite parts, and how everything is filled with smaller and smaller whole things, and how each whole thing is really just half in relationship to that which is above it, but it's also whole in relationship to that which is beneath it. And the secret of the holistic unity of transforming fractures and fragments into fractals. This is Tikkun Chatzi. This is the Tikkun Chatzos. This is the secret of Chatzi Kuf, of splitting the Kuf into Nun Share Bina, so that I can see, okay, Kedusha may have fallen apart. My original sense of wholeness has fallen apart, and now I'm left with a half measure, but to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu through that half measure, to awaken ourselves at the midpoint of night, at the midpoint of our moments, at the midpoint of our days, and to awaken ourselves to remember that, yes, Hashem, things are broken, things are chatzi, but why? Because only you are whole. And in that place, to allow the Ruach Sfinus to awaken within us that Ma Rav Tuvcha Asher Tzafanta L'Reyecha, the goodness that is hidden away, that we can and not understand the goodness that is hidden away. The goodness that is hidden away is Eden Stima'a, Gan Eden, which is not available to us right now. Ayin Loira Asa Elikim Zulasecha. Gan Eden is a lashon of Adayin, meaning to say that it has not yet been revealed. All we have access to is the Nahar Hayotzimi Eden. We have the Bina that comes out of Chachma, and the Bina is the Chatzi Davar, and that's where David HaMelech sings, and that's where David HaMelech lives, and that's where David HaMelech wants us to be, and that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be served from. And when we can awaken that Nahar, that Kinor Shel David, the Nahare Or, those sounds and that beautiful music that emerges from within, playing the strings over the Halal, over that empty space within the heart of Libi Chal B'Kirbi, that draws us back into Gan Eden. And then when we enter back into Gan Eden, we realize that we still have not yet entered back into Gan Eden, and that we're still just tracing the Nahar back into Gan Eden. But when we realize that we're still the Nahar Hayotzim Gan Eden, and that even though it's just a chatzi, it's still coming out from Gan Eden. That's how we uncover the wholeness within that broken part. This is the secret chord that we have to learn how to play for ourselves and for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and for Metzius at large, to see the half nature of things, but to see them with eyes of expectancy, not with eyes of frustration or desire to be whole, like other religions that want to make themselves whole, or other psychological broken systems that want to make a person whole. Yiddishkeit is about accepting the chatzi nature of it, accepting the half nature of it, and learning to yearn from that place. Mechatzti va'ani arapeh, Kadosh Baruch Hu has created a mechitza in the Welt, which appears to be one half and one half, above and below, and everything is just a half picture, but our job is not to bring about the whole picture. Our job is to believe in the whole picture and to realize that it's specifically from within the territory of only receiving half the picture that I have the capacity of having an emuna in the whole picture, and that the tzipiyah to geula is on a certain level higher than the redemption itself, as Rav Yaakov Moshe Chalap points out. Because in the redemption towards geula, all I have is pure desire for a wholeness that is beyond measure. When something is revealed, so that's a measurable form of wholeness, and then that measurable form of wholeness is immediately going to be transformed into another stage of partiality. But prior to the emergence of wholeness, where we're living with that ruach tzafon, with the unbridgeable nature, the unclosable nature of that open side of the bays that makes us realize that no, we're not God and we're not perfect and we can't have everything at once, and we have to be left in a position of yearning and wanting and desiring. But to take that, not to run away from it, but to cultivate that as the very site in which avodah is going to take shape, that's the light of David HaMelech. That's the light of the Ruach Tzafon that awakens the Kinor de David, which is the heart of each and every one of us. And from there, we then go from the seven strings and we bring it back into the eighth string. We see how all of the deficiency is really rooted in Bina, which is already a semblance of unity. And we come to accept the mechitza even more, and we come to accept the chatzi davar even more. And then we draw it back into the nine strings, which is chachma, where we see, okay, all of the deficiency is rooted in wholeness. And then we go to the 10th string, which is ultimately where Hashem reveals himself, and we don't know how it's going to look when Hashem reveals himself. We know kedushasi l'malam mikdushasechem, and that the song of David Malka Mashiach is never going to end, and that David Melech Yisrael Chai v'Kayim, and there will always be a need for tefillah la'ani. But that anius is not going to be an impoverishment of the body, but rather it's going to be a richness of impoverishment. It's going to be the impoverishment of spirit that awakens the shiflus haruach ha'amiti, which is the sharish of simcha amiti ba'avodas Hashem, of bitul muchletes, of being okay with what we are and how we are, and serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu from that chatzi davar. And so be'ezras Hashem, we should be zoicha to awaken ourselves with the ruach tzvainis, to mourn over the fact that things are just chatzi davarim, but to realize that it's not because we can have a whole davar. It's only because our avoida is to be matakin the chatzi, tikkun chatzos, to take the broken piece and elevate it upwards back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, be'ezras Hashem.